Hello again, fight fans. Welcome to episode number 221 of the Neutral Corner Boxing Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Montero. Happy Monday to you all, and I hope you had a good weekend. Going to have a good week. We're slowly but surely getting back to work, and that includes the fight community. UFC just had a big event in Florida last weekend. Boxing should be back soon, guys. So no need for the feelings of doom and gloom. Probably in another month or so, we're going to have some boxing. Later on in the show, we're going to have promoter Tom Loeffler on the show. So if you guys have any questions for him, get them in on the chat. Now, as always, guys, make sure that you hit that thumbs up button on YouTube. If you're listening live on Spreaker right now, make sure you give us a like and a follow over there as well. As always, spread the word about the show. Spread the word about the channel. And I should remind you guys, I just posted an interview that I did with Joseph Parker over the weekend. Make sure you check that out. That's on my YouTube, but it's also all over, where the podcasts are distributed. I also put up 2 articles on ringtv.com related to that interview, so make sure you guys check that out. Joseph Parker was real cool. Setting up the interview with him was really, really easy. The only thing was, I think it's like a 14-hour time difference, so that was kind of crazy. Other than that, though, super cool guy. So much more than just a fighter. There's so much more to him, and I think that the community, not just the fight community, but just the broader community on social media, is starting to get an idea of that with the videos he's been releasing during the quarantine, during the lockdown. They've been a lot of fun, man. I think he's really increased his profile. I see my man Pietro's on the chat. I was just about to talk about you, man. So, guys, check out this tee from my man Pietro. PS Shirts, check it out. On this tee, Mike Tyson, Arturo Gatti. Boom. 2 of the all-time great blood and guts warriors in the sport. This picture here on my tee, this has to go back to like the early 90s, maybe mid-90s, I don't know, man. But guys, check out my man, PS Shirts. Awesome, awesome shirts for diehard fight fans. You're not going to get this kind of shit at the store. You're not going to get this at the mall or anything like that. So, yeah, let me stand up just a little bit so you guys can see this. Oh, look at that. There, you guys can see I am indeed wearing pants. So there you go. You have proof. Or I should say shorts. But yeah, dope shirt. Awesome tee. Thank you so much, Pietro. I appreciate it, my man. You guys, check him out. Pietro, post your links in the chat so people can check out your stuff. You guys have seen me rock another one of his tees before, another Arturo Gatti tee. It was awesome, or it is awesome. And now I got this one with Mike Tyson on there. I get accused of being a Mike Tyson hater. Nothing could be further from the truth. I'm actually a big fan of Tyson. He was the man. And I've made this argument many times. You can make an argument. Of course, Muhammad Ali, probably the biggest figure politically in the history of boxing. But you can make an argument. The most popular star in terms of just boxing, in terms of media ever in the sport is Mike Tyson. And proof of that is what I talked about last week, man, where he broke the internet with that 6-punch combination that he threw, and he's posted some other videos recently. Everyone's sharing them. He's all over the place. So awesome tee. Thank you so much, Pietro. I appreciate it, man. And speaking of Tyson, he's talking about doing some exhibition fights, coming up, whatever. And Evander Holyfield posted some videos recently on social media saying the same thing. Now, Tyson and Holyfield have their faculties. They're healthy. And Holyfield really stays in pretty good shape. Tyson's gotten himself back in shape. I don't love the idea of them taking any punches, even if it's an exhibition. But I don't hate it if it's them. But I also saw James Toney came out with a video saying he wants to get in the mix. Now that I don't like. I do not like that because James Toney has taken way too much punishment. He's got what I call a heavy tongue. And I'm not saying this to diss him. I'm saying it because I care. Like, he does not need to be fighting no more. So I really hope James doesn't come back. But, all these guys, just stay retired, man. Just stay retired. But they saw Mike getting all this attention on social. And everybody was like, oh, shit, I want some of that, I think everyone's just a little bored and cooped up. Do you guys really want to see Mike Tyson or Holyfield or any of these guys in an exhibition fight? I don't think I want to. But, yes, I did kind of get my hair cut. Look at that. I got that high fade on the sides. Ooh, I was out working in the yard all day yesterday, and I kind of burned the back of my head. I got a little sun on the front here. Man, I used to go in the sun a lot when I was younger and get real tan. I can show you guys pictures where I look like a different ethnicity because I'm so tan. And now I don't go in the sun at all. I avoid the sunlight, you know. My sister, she was a nurse. Now she does like reporting for the hospital. But I have several family members, you know, that work as nurses and stuff. And they're like, Mike, you got to stay out of the damn sun. So now I go out there and do some yard work. And that's why I'm a little red on my face. But yeah, the back of my head right here where it's shaved, I guess because I was bent over all day lifting shit outside, the back of my head is red as hell. So like literally the sides are good, but the back, it looks like a freaking cherry or something. I don't know. Okay, so I want to talk real quickly about this UFC thing. Let's see. Our guest will probably be on like 10 minutes. Yeah, so we got a few minutes here. UFC 249, I think it was last Saturday in Jacksonville, Florida. A few of you guys have asked about it. A lot of people in the boxing community have been talking about it because, you know, everyone's starved for fights. So there's a lot of boxing fans that are also UFC fans. And as for my thoughts on this, I think, you know, look, Dana White set everything up. He did testing. Everybody involved was tested. In fact, I believe one fighter tested positive for COVID-19, was taken off the card, was quarantined and everything. So they took extra precautions. And as far as I know, it seems everything came out safe. So I had no issue with it. And I understand why he wants to get back in business. The only thing, I didn't realize it was a pay-per-view. And to me, that was kind of a blown opportunity. You know, at first when I heard about this, I'm like, it's going to do big ratings because I thought it'd be on regular ESPN or something. It would have done massive ratings if it was just on regular ESPN. But putting this on pay-per-view while we have basically record unemployment, or at least, you know, we have an unemployment like this in a century almost, and it's not just in America, it's global. I don't know if that was the smartest move by Dana White, but the degenerates probably bought this thing, I'm sure. More people probably streamed it. However, I saw a bunch of tweets and posts and shares and all this stuff on social today as I caught up with my email and everything after having a busy weekend working on that Joseph Parker project, that this guy, Francis Ngannou, you guys forgive me if I am mispronouncing that name. It looks like Ngannou or maybe just Ngannou. I guess he won some fight by knockout. He's a heavyweight over in UFC, and people are asking, does this guy punch harder than Wilder? Man, this guy could go in boxing, and he could probably make an impact. He could probably beat guys in the heavyweight division, blah, blah, blah. People, we have this conversation over and over and over, and I'm forced to step up and be the guy, or not the guy, one of the guys that says, shut up. No, it's two different sports. Okay? And I'm not trying to diss UFC fighters, MMA fighters. They don't throw punches very well. And I think a lot of casual sports fans, which is the majority of UFC fans, diehard, nuanced, experienced MMA fans, I'm talking guys who actually trained, who fought, who know what they're talking about, have been watching UFC since it was a tiny little club thing that wasn't even allowed in a lot of different jurisdictions. Those old school guys, they're not making comments like that. It's casual sports fans that tune in. Again, that's the majority of UFC's fans. I'm not knocking UFC for that. Dana White has done a masterful job marketing to that crowd. Guys, every network kind of promotion, not just in fight sports, but all sports, basketball, football, whatever it is, all the narratives that they create and push, that's not for the diehard fans. The diehard fans already know their shit. That's for the casuals. So all this, MMA fighters would beat a boxer in a street fight. Oh, the smaller gloves make the punches harder. Oh, this guy could go compete in boxing right now because, you know, the smaller gloves. That's all bullshit. It's for the casual fan who doesn't know what the hell they're talking about. So they buy into those narratives, and this stuff trends on social media. It just annoys the shit out of me because we don't see this the other way around. When Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder in their rematch in February, Fury used his size. He kind of mauled and grappled and wrestled a little bit and roughed up, physically bullied and roughed up Deontay Wilder. It wasn't like this big one-punch knockout, this destructive type of performance in that sense. It was a dude bullying another dude and being physical and bodying him, right? We didn't see a bunch of boxing fans saying, oh man, Tyson Fury, because he's 6'9", 270, he could go fight the UFC heavyweight champion and wrestle him to the ground and shit. The way he wrestled Deontay Wilder. I wonder how that would work out. We didn't see a bunch of talking heads on ESPN, the Stephen A. Smiths and those guys saying that kind of shit. People just said, man, what a great fight by Tyson Fury. Man, I want to see the third fight, whatever. There's never these constant comparisons of boxers to UFC fighters. Yet, we constantly see people on that side constantly comparing that shit to boxing. And I have to hear 80 million motherfucking times about, oh, Conor McGregor could fuck up this dude in the boxing ring. Oh, this guy could mess up that guy in the boxing ring. Stop! It's two different sports. And it's not just punches. Like over there, they call it strikes, which makes sense because they're not really punching. It is a strike. They're not throwing a punch the way boxers do. So I like it. It makes sense that they call them strikes. So and I'm not going to get into all the specifics of it, but look, in boxing, it's footwork, it's angles, it's spacing, it's distance, it's timing, it's getting the right angles on your punches, the right leverage, it's getting extension. All these things that MMA fighters don't do because in that sport, you have to be more squared up. You have to have a lower center of gravity. The distance is different. The angles and spacing are different because you have to worry about takedowns. You have to worry about kicks. You have to worry about different things. In boxing, the distance is much tighter. The action is much faster. You have to be a lot quicker and faster. In MMA, you have to have a lower center of gravity and be more squared up. Like I said before, it's a closer skill set to American football in terms of tackling that sort of those sorts of movements, those bursts. There's lulls and bursts, right? And in boxing, you're on your feet for 3 minutes. It's closer, I would say, to basketball, the skill set, just the movements of it, the rhythm of it. Even hockey, you can make an argument, okay? So it's just two different things. Stop making these damn comparisons. They don't hold up, and it doesn't matter. This guy, Francis Ngannou, is clearly one of the best MMA fighters in the world right now, or UFC fighters. So that's good enough. Let him dominate over there and be one of the best over there. Why do we have to keep comparing to boxing? It's the same thing I say about female boxing, always comparing itself to men's boxing. If female boxing, quote unquote, is equal to men's boxing, you wouldn't have to make those comparisons. I think those comparisons are made out of insecurity. I think it's a little brother comparing himself to a big brother. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to say this from a place of looking down or sounding arrogant or cocky. I'm just saying, if you're confident in your product and you feel that you got the best show in town, stop comparing yourself to the other fucking guy because you don't have to. It's two different things. They're both great sports, two different skill sets, okay? And all this, this guy would fuck up this guy in a real fight. Look, in a real fight, quote unquote, the motherfucker who picks up a lead pipe and bashes your fucking head in. That's who wins a real fight, okay? So stop talking about this guy because he could tackle you, would beat the puncher. Look, it's about who's the better fighter, period. It doesn't matter what fucking discipline they're at. Let it go. Enjoy your sport. Enjoy both sports. Enjoy every sport. And stop making these ridiculous comparisons. We've been having this motherfucking conversation since the 90s. And I admit, I let myself get dragged into it a bunch of times. I've screwed up by getting involved, okay? I'm done with it. Stop making these comparisons. This dude could not beat a top 20 heavyweight at all. I don't give a shit if he trains for 6 months. People talk about, well, Conor McGregor lasted, 8-9 rounds with Floyd. Do you think that Floyd couldn't have fucked him up in one round if he wanted to? Do you not realize Floyd's history with gambling and how he's basically the gross domestic product for the state of Nevada? And what the hell was going on there, carrying that dude to the round he carried him to? Do you not get it? Even UFC fans knew what was up with that, the smart ones. Come on, people. And by the way, if Floyd got in the cage, Conor would tackle him and twist his arm and shit, and it'd be done in a minute over on that side too. But if those two ever fought in the cage, you best damn believe that shit would go 3 rounds because they'd have an over-under in Vegas and they'd want to go with the over. It'd be the same thing that happened when they boxed, okay? People, Grow up. Okay, enough of that. I saw a super chat over here. Super chat from Trent. Thank you so much, Trent. I appreciate it. He says, love the Joe Parker interview and article, man. Please ask Tom if Bohachuk is going to fight for a mandatory this year. Bohachuk and Madrimov will run 154. Great, man. I was actually going to ask about Sergey. So great question. Thank you for the super chat. And thanks for checking out the articles that I wrote for about Joseph Parker. I wrote one article specifically about his social media videos and all that stuff. And then I wrote another article, Best I Faced. I asked Joseph, best jab, best chin, and we went through like 10 different categories, and he gave me his thoughts on that. Some of them might surprise you guys, so make sure you check that out. Okay, now, I already had a little bit of a sunburn here on my cheeks and my nose, and now, not because I'm heated, it looks even worse. Funny how that shit works. Okay, let's see. Let's go over here to the phone lines. I think our guest might be on, and yeah, I got that out of the way. Let's bring our guest on the line here. Let's see if this is him. Tom, is that you?
Hey, Michael Montero, how are you doing out there in Atlanta, Georgia?
Good. How you doing, man?
I hear Georgia's way ahead of California in terms of opening up. I think people are getting cabin fever out here in California. You know how it was when you lived out here. If you don't let people go to the beach out here in Southern California, they got big problems.
Dude, how do you close the beach when you are the state known for beaches? How does that work?
I don't really understand that one. I'm not an expert on policies or things like that. I figure, if it's a big, wide open space, at least let the people use it, but then naturally you can patrol it and give warnings if for some reason it gets abused, because there are some knuckleheads out there that, for some reason don't observe the social distancing, but to take away the right from everyone seems a little bit counterproductive. But at least the good news is I think on Wednesday now it's officially the beaches are going to be open, and Venice boardwalk, where people can roller skate or ride their bikes or walk, and I think that'll just open up things a lot more. I think when people get outside the house, it just feels like a little bit of at least for me, it feels a little bit of a sense of normalcy, as long as you're doing something that is, again, along the guidelines of social distancing and everything.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, especially in a place like LA where it's so compact, like you're crushed like a sardine can. You got to get outside. With here, I think it's been 2 weeks that they've had or a little over a week where restaurants are starting to open up. And I saw a lot of people bashing Georgia on the news because of that. But here's the thing. Tiff and I went out last weekend. We got dinner. We ordered a couple of drinks. No bars I think some bars are opening, but they're like restaurant bars. But they space the tables 10 feet apart. Everyone's wearing a mask. You're sitting outside on the patio. You're not inside. It was fine. You know what I'm saying? And we're supporting the local businesses, the small businesses around here in the neighborhood that are so important and vital. Every community is like an ecosystem. So California, man, crazy state. I love it, but I don't know, man. All right.
Go
ahead.
What I was going to say is that I agree with that. Is if everything is spaced out and people are observing the right guidelines, it makes sense. But here it's the first time. I don't cook, Michael, so I was like 90% or 95%. I would always be in restaurants, and on Friday was the very first time that I actually picked up a lunch to support one of the local businesses out here, and it just felt good. Getting out and wearing your mask and picking up the restaurant. You're supporting them. Picking up the food from the restaurant. So definitely, you want to make sure that these businesses that we appreciate are in business by the time things open up.
Yeah, it's amazing how good it felt just to be able to go out somewhere and support a local small business, a family-owned business. A lot of times, a lot of these restaurants, you'll find that it's a family running it, and a lot of times it's an immigrant family. It's a family that maybe the parents moved here and the kids are American and they're all working together. And it's like, man, this is the American dream. Let's support this. But there's people, of course, the Twitter heroes have to bash that. But speaking of getting back to work, let's talk about getting back to boxing. Because I know you just had a call with the California Commission earlier today, right?
Yeah, it was a conference call. I really got to appreciate the commission and what they're doing here in California, trying to keep everyone informed, taking input from, licensed promoters or, everyone that's interested in doing business here. Big topic was UFC doing their show in Florida. Florida also seems to be pretty progressive in terms of allowing WWE there. UFC went there on Saturday. My understanding was for the majority of everything went smooth. There was one fighter. It was well reported. One fighter tested positive. I think two of his cornermen also tested positive, so they weren't able to compete. But I was texting with Dana, and he said it was an overwhelming success. I think everyone was so pent up and on the demand of just watching live competitive sports, and there was really nothing else on in terms of live programming sports-wise that I think everyone was tuned in to that UFC event. So it was nice to see that it went off successfully. If there would have been a major hitch or a big problem with the event, it could have put us back,
Right. They had to get that
while,
right.
So,
It had to go smoothly, because if they had one issue, that would have just blown everything up, maybe for the rest of the year,
Yep.
Well, is there any breaking news from the conference call today in California? Are there any dates, any timelines as to when, club shows can come back, anything like that?
Well, I'm hearing also on a bigger topic that other sports leagues were really keeping a close eye on how it went with the UFC, NFL, baseball, NBA, and because it went off, like I said, it went off, without any major hitches. I think that was a positive encouragement for those leagues as well. But to your question, they were clear in California that there's really no set time frame for, I guess it's what's called the Phase 3 opening, where they would allow a sporting event like boxing, but no live audience. The guidelines would be everyone would need to get tested at least twice beforehand, and what they're looking at doing, because it doesn't make sense to get a test, or it doesn't really have a big purpose to get a test, and then someone goes on an airplane and then maybe contracts it on the plane after they get tested. So then they need to do a second test the day before. They get the results. The lab that California uses gets them in 24 hours. So if you test on a Wednesday, and then you pass your Wednesday or Thursday, you pass your test, then you would be allowed to then go on Friday to the weigh-in, and only the people that have been tested would be allowed in that area of the weigh-in. Naturally, all the commission people, TV production people, anyone physically that's going to be in there. My guess is, they don't really go into detail, but I'm guessing there'll be some type of a designation, whether it's a wristband or credential. Credential, you'd be able to switch out. So a wristband, and then only those people would be allowed there. And then they'll have to be, pretty much quarantined until the event itself the next day. So there's going to be a lot of different procedures that people aren't used to being done, but at least there's a light at the end of the tunnel of how live boxing can actually resume. I think the earliest they're looking at in California, probably realistically, is beginning of July. I think that's the California time frame.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people, and really since March, July, I think, has been the target out there. But, you think about, I know you've done a lot of interviews recently. I know you've been talking about this, so sorry to beat a dead horse, because you probably answered these same questions 100 times. But, I think a lot of fans don't think about the fact that there are some fighters that can rely on a TV contract, TV money coming in. But there's a lot of fighters, most fighters, where the way that they're making money is off of the ticket sales, right? I mean, those shows you do in Hollywood there at the Avalon, that's very heavily dependent on ticket sales. So when can something like that conceivably come back?
That's a $1 million question. It's one thing to allow the fights to go on. They're going to be televised. They're basically going to be in either a completely empty arena or TV studio, or people are talking about doing boxing gyms. With the camera set up, that type of thing. Avalon would work theoretically for something like that, because it's a smaller venue, but it's a great TV type of venue. You've been there a number of times. That would work, but for the actual club shows or the smaller events that are dependent on the ticket sales, or the fighters, like you said, that sell a lot of tickets that are dependent on ticket sales. I think first of all, it's going to depend on how things go, starting in July, and then probably, just a guess, it wouldn't be until September, October, November before they open it up in limited capacity for public, and then. I think a lot of it's going to be interrelated with the other leagues also, because if you're at Madison Square Garden, for example, whether it's an NBA game with the Knicks or a hockey game with the Rangers or a boxing event with Triple G, whatever it is, it's all going to be similar guidelines. That's where it kind of it won't be just the boxing guidelines. It'll be, or the athletic commission guidelines. It'll be NBA, NHL, across different lines like that. So I know people are really concerned with the big arenas, like how that's even going to work, because you open up a big arena like that and you're at 40% capacity or maybe 50% capacity. Think about like maybe every other row, potentially, selling tickets and then having spaced out and then a block more tickets, that type of thing. You're really taking away a lot of the capacity, but then to open up a building like that is not cheap. So it's going to be interesting times. And even the football stadiums. I mean, we got 2 new football stadiums here, and one in LA, one in Las Vegas. And imagine, you normally have 80,000 fans there or 60,000 fans, whatever it works out to be, and you're basically just playing on a football field. I mean, it was kind of eerie. I don't know if you watched it or not, but I tuned in. I wanted to support the UFC and Dana for being really kind of a pioneer, taking a lot of risks. It really could have been a bad hit on his reputation, because I know he was pretty out there. He put himself out there, really wanting to be the first one back. And if it would have backfired, I know it would have been a big backlash for him. So I wanted to support the UFC in that event, and it was just eerie, because normally they do a great job with the production, TV production, ring walks, the music, the lights, the entertainment.
All that's gone.
And a big part of that, all the fan noise, the cheering and everything, and just being inside of an empty arena really was pretty bizarre.
Yeah, I think, if you look at every type of media now that people consume, whether it's television, movies, news, whatever, there's really no reason to see most of it live. You can Netflix a show and binge watch it. You don't have to go to the theater to see a movie anymore. But when it comes to sports, that is still the one form of media that people want to see live. And a big part of that, maybe the biggest part, is the crowd. So how do you make up for that? Because as you said, Tom, like, it's not just the crowd, it's the pyrotechnics, it's the music, it's the lighting, it's all these different things that you really don't do if there's no crowd there. So basically you're going to get a dude walking to the ring with his chief second, maybe his cut man, whatever, and that's it. I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah, it's really a big twist on everything. We've been involved in some of the biggest fights in boxing, as far as attendance. When the Klitschko fights over in Europe with the big soccer stadiums, or Klitschko Joshua at Wembley Stadium, and to take that type of an atmosphere away is really, it's really uncharted territory, because there's always been, it's like every so often there's a challenge, but this is like a worldwide challenge that just affects everyone. And when you start canceling soccer matches in Europe, I mean, that's our lifeblood over there. That's like us over here, with baseball, football, and it really takes or the Olympics. I mean, think about the Olympics. Every 4 years, these athletes have trained, their entire life, or at least the last 4 years, 10 years, whatever it is, to compete in the Olympics, and then that gets canceled. I mean, it's really such a global scale right now that when we're talking about a local show in Hollywood, it's kind of dwarfed, but it's just as important. I mean, these guys, they train hard, they work hard, they have big dreams and aspirations. And I heard you talking about Sori Boachuk before, and he was supposed to fight in April, and Brian Sabayo was supposed to fight in March on the Hollywood show, and these guys are right at the ascension of their careers. And it's so important. Like when we're developing Triple G, it's just like the main thing was fighting 5 times a year, 4 times a year, and just being out there internationally, wherever he fought. And that's how he kind of rose to stardom so quickly, and coupled naturally because he was so exciting and so many knockouts. But if you don't get that exposure, you don't get that activity when you're kind of like in the beginning stages of your career, it's hard to really make that transition, and it's going to put people on hold, potentially 6 months up to a year, just depending on how all this shakes out.
And it's huge. I mean, a guy like Bohachuk is right there. Right
On the cusp.
Yeah,
He really
it's just,
is.
man, just right. I mean, this was going to be the year where maybe, he could work himself into a mandatory. In fact, one of my one of the guys on the chat just asked about that. What happens to a situation where maybe a fighter was right there at the cusp, getting that mandatory spot? Can that be pushed up or anything now, or does basically what was going to take place, over the first and second half of this year, does that plan continue? Or does the plan change now? Do you think some of those situations could be expedited?
Well, we're still going to try to push them as much as we can. Typically the way it works with boxing ratings and organizations and things of that nature, if you're inactive for over a year, you get dropped out of the ratings. I think, everyone's going to take into consideration this, 3-month, 4-month, 5 or 6 month period where people can't fight just because, you weren't able to fight. But, once it starts up again, and then naturally the progression would be try to get him to fight or try to get a fight with he's rated number 12 now in WBC, number 10 in the IBF, so he's cracked like the top 10 ratings of the world, and if he beats another top 10 opponent, then he's like right there, toward working towards a mandatory. So I think it just puts it doesn't put him backwards, it just puts a delay on his position of when everything starts up again. Then he'll have to stay active. And the great thing about a guy like Bohachuk, he realizes that he saw what happened with Triple G. He's been in a training camp up there a number of times with Gennadiy, and he sees, look, you got to fight, you got to be exciting. You don't have to knock guys out, but it doesn't hurt. And the tougher the competition, the faster you arrive in the ratings, and that's the stage where he's at right now. So in terms of mandatory, getting back to the question that callers or viewers had asked, that probably realistically won't be in a mandatory position until at least next year, just from how things are shaking out.
Let me ask you this. I think there could be an opportunity for a state like maybe Georgia, Florida, whoever it is. There's going to be at some point one state where the governor says, okay, we've played around for a couple months. We've had a couple sporting events with no crowds. We're ready to open up to a crowd now. If you, let's say it's Georgia, and you wanted to put on those shows you do at the Avalon, but let's say, maybe you could get something worked out to come to Atlanta and put on a show here. If this state's open and no other state's open, how does that work with, let's say, the sanctioning organization? Could the sanctioning organization put the kibosh on that and say, no, because they have their own guidelines and they don't want to go with what Georgia's doing, for example? Do you go by the state commission, or do you have to adhere to the sanctioning organizations in that, with that stuff?
Well, for the title fights, you definitely have to also abide by the sanctioning body rules.
Right.
Sometimes WBC, for example, or whichever sanctioning body it is, WBA or WBO or IBF, whatever it is, have their own individual rules. For a title fight, then it kind of takes over. As far as for them to actually sanction a fight, has to definitely go by WBC rules. But in most cases, they will defer to the local commission. So if you go to Germany, it's it's different dealing with the German commission than it is, for example, California commission or the Nevada commission, or even you go to UK, and that's a whole different ballgame over there. The British Board of Boxing Control is like its own authority over there. So they'll defer to the local commission rules. So theoretically, if a commission will allow a fight to go on and will allow public to be there, and under whatever circumstances is, whether they get tested with a temperature, a thermometer, or they have to wear masks, or whatever the circumstances. I think that the commission or the sanctioning body would defer to the local commission, because the commission is the one that actually would take the responsibility when you get licensed to compete,
right.
you need to be licensed with that local commission. So they take on the responsibility and liability for the testing. Now, WBC has, for example, their own additional testing requirements. They have like the clean boxing program, which
Right.
fighter can get tested year round. So they go a lot of times up and beyond, above and beyond the local commissions. But I would see if there is a state that allows it, that the sanctioning bodies would allow a title fight to go on in that particular state.
I think they go along with it because ultimately they're going to get their sanctioning fees. So if no one fights, they don't get their fees. You know what I mean? Everything's funny when you're making money. I just think there's a big opportunity for one of these commissions to jump in and say, hey, we're open for business. We can have fights here. If they could show that, their COVID cases are low and, things are trending downward, there's a big opportunity there. But we had somebody in the chat earlier ask about Superfly. Are there any plans in the works to, of course, I know everything's been crushed with the lockdown, but are there any plans in the works, or were there at any point to do another Superfly card?
I tell you, that was one of my favorite series. I know you
those
went
were
to
awesome,
a number
man. Oh, yeah.
of Superfly shows. We did 3 of them, and I think for the value, the TV ratings HBO got versus the value of the license fees they paid, I mean, we really changed the economics of the flyweight division with those Superfly shows, even when Chocolatito was fighting as a co-feature on the Triple G show. So if there's a way to start that series again, I would definitely. I've been looking at ways to do it because I really think it was successful, not only locally, the ticket sales, because they were really popular fighters, but internationally, they were a big success. So that was one of the theories that was near and dear to my heart, and gotta acknowledge Peter Nelson for allowing it, because you really couldn't on HBO or these premium networks. They didn't really want to put on the smaller divisions. They were always welterweights, weights, middleweights, especially heavyweights, and so with the Superfly shows, most of the fights were a lot more entertaining than the heavier fighters. So it was a great and it gave the guys that were making nominal amount of money in their fights, a bigger platform. I mean, look at Chocolatito Gonzalez. Roman was, at that high level for such a long time, but only when he got on HBO, only when we gave him the exposure and the promotion, then did people start recognizing, he should be at the top of the pound for pound list.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people had never seen him fight before that, and several of the fighters on those cards. The thing I remember about those cards was just all the different flags in the crowd. You just saw flags from every corner of the earth. It was so cool, man. It was like being at the Olympics or something. Those were so much fun.
When Inoue was on that show, and we had the Japanese flags, and then naturally Chocolatito had the Nicaraguan flags, and then Estrada, he was on every one of those Superfly shows. He had a lot of Mexican flags, and so it really was international.
I think Donnie Nietes was on one, Artem Dalakian. You just had guys from everywhere, so it was so much fun just to see that. It felt like I was at the World Cup or something. It was just so much fun. But I wanted to ask you, of course, about Triple G, because a lot has been said about the third fight with Canelo. I think the people at the Zone would love to do it this year, but of course, COVID blew up. That fight would have to go to Vegas to bring in the gate money. We don't know if that's possible. And then Triple G, or it was either him or Jonathan Banks in some recent interviews, have said, well, we're not going to fight Canelo next. We're going to fight Kamil Zemirza, I always mess up his name, Zerimeta, the mandatory for the IBF title. What's the latest?
Well, I think there's a lot of different dynamics involved in that particular situation. I mean, just to be clear, Triple G was set on fighting Canelo last September. When he signed the deal with the Zone, Canelo, for whatever reason, chose not to fight him at that time. I think a lot of people can speculate why Canelo didn't want to fight him then. Then Triple G, Canelo fought Kovalev, which clearly Triple G Canelo is a much bigger fight, much higher profile fight than
much more competitive.
Kovalev was, but and competitive, I guess you could say that as well. But Then, Gennadiy committed to fighting Zarameta, who's his IBF mandatory. I saw some of your friends on Twitter saying something about trying to compare Andre Ward, and Ward took some easy fights after he was off for layoff, and why does Gennadiy want an easy fight now before he fights Canelo? It's like, it's his mandatory fight. It's not an easy fight. It's an undefeated guy, but it's his obligation. But going later beyond that, what we were talking about is opening up fights to the public. I mean, when we did the Triple G fights with Canelo 1 and 2, we broke some or set some records up there for Las Vegas for middleweight championships. I think we had like the third highest gate for the first fight. And so when you take that component of a huge fight like that and you take it out of the financial equation, now all of a sudden you're talking about something completely different. So I don't even think it's realistic to have a huge fight, a huge audience by September or whatever date that they're speculating that third fight might happen. So, Gennadiy made his comments. Jonathan Banks, made his comments. I don't really, want to dwell on it too much, other than, it wasn't just like a thing that he didn't want to fight Canelo, which a lot of people like to try to speculate on that. It was really more, he wanted to stay with his original plan. He had signed to fight Zarameta. That fight was scheduled at the beginning of this year, the first quarter of this year, and it's just really just being postponed to take that fight. And then, he's always wanted the trilogy fight. He's just not going to put his career on hold and be beholden to Canelo again when Canelo changed his mind in September. And he said that in his comments. So, I kind of stand by exactly what he said there.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me the way Gennadiy's comments are received. For people to criticize him when he's fought Canelo twice, he fought Derevianchenko, Jacobs. I mean, those 4 fights right there in the last few years, those are 3 of the top 5 middleweights in the world, and he fought all those guys. So, and then he has a mandatory. That was, I think you guys were I think you were exploring doing that in Chicago, right? In February. Originally, was it Chicago?
That was the original plan, because
Okay,
I'm Polish, and Chicago has a big Polish population.
Right.
Usyk had just fought there.
I was there for that one.
Show.
Yeah,
They did well. So that would have been interesting to do in Chicago, but everything has kind of changed since then, and it's just really up in the air as to, we don't even know when a fight could take place, and then wherever the location is, that'll be kind of secondary. But I think everyone would like to kind of get a fight like that done, and then see what happens with the Canelo fight. I know you've been a big supporter of Triple G over the years, and you've probably had your Twitter wars with a lot of the people that for whatever reason try to criticize him. I was talking to Doug Fisher. We do that Sunday Periscope every week. And I was, cleaning out some of my, just organizing some of my things, and I came across some older Ring magazines. 2013. It was just a random one, March 2013. I looked at the middleweight ratings. I looked at all the guys in the top 10 of the Ring magazine ratings, and Gennadiy either fought him and knocked him out, or there was 4 top 10 guys that he knocked out. Sergio Martinez, who was considered the best at that particular time. His promoter, famously said he'd never put him in with Triple G. Then there were Pirog, who got injured, and Gennadiy had actually signed to fight him, and then Pirog got injured and couldn't fight him. So if you look at, and then there was Ndam had vacated his title in order not to fight Gennadiy. Actually, mandatory. I've never heard that before. Mandatory actually vacating his spot, not to fight the champion.
Yeah, that doesn't happen very often.
It's been bizarre. That happened with Canelo originally when, Gennadiy was a unified champion, and a fighter actually vacates a title not to fight someone like that. But, it's for the people that know the history of Triple G and go deeper into his, what's really gone on in his career, they see, like, we went to great lengths to fight the best available guys. Nobody wanted to fight Martin Murray. You remember Martin Murray fought Sergio Martinez in Argentina, dropped him twice, only got credit for one, and arguably won that fight. And nobody wanted to fight Murray because he wasn't a champion, but a very dangerous opponent. We actually, Gennadiy flew to Monte Carlo just to fight him because he couldn't get a visa to the United States. He had a challenge getting his visa over here to the U.S., but he could fight him in Monte Carlo, and that was the best available person at the time. But people like to kind of overlook those type of things. But yeah, he's on track. He looks great physically. He looks like he doesn't age, and I know he takes well care of his body and all that type of stuff. So I think Gennadiy is one of those guys that really can fight as long as he wants to, because people start to try to bring that up, as far as he's getting older and that type of thing. And I don't really see much of a difference. I know there were a lot of things with Derevyanchenko fight. Look, you can't take anything away from Derevyanchenko. There's a lot of people that thought Derevyanchenko beat Danny Jacobs, or at least got a draw with Danny Jacobs. And Gennadiy was one of those guys that fought the young, hungry guy that was coming up from Ukraine. And my friends from Ukraine said, "Why would you fight Derevyanchenko? It just makes no sense." Because they know his amateur background. And Gennadiy had no problem taking that fight. He won his IBF title back, and if he makes another title defense now, that was the other thing with the Zermeta fight. Getting back to that, if he makes one more title defense, he'll actually have broken Bernard Hopkins. It wouldn't be consecutive title reigns, but it would be 21 title defenses. Would be the most middleweight title defenses in boxing history. So when you can make history like that, that's a big statement.
Yeah, if that happens, Tom, some of the people on Twitter and YouTube are going to go nuts, because then they're going to talk about WBA regular versus WBA super. It's just, oh man, because I think Gennadiy obviously is favored against Zermeta, and if he beats him, you're right. That is the in terms of total defenses, he's there. Yeah. And there's just going to be some people who just won't like it. I don't know what it is about Triple G, but he's kind of become a polarizing figure. I guess when you're one of the top guys in the sport, that just naturally kind of happens. But there's some people, I don't know if they're threatened maybe by what he represents, because I've talked about this in recent videos. There's always been these demographic waves and shifts in boxing. And, right now you're seeing the Eastern European and Central Asian fighters really start to make a mark in the sport. And maybe that just scares people. I don't know what it is, but you're just seeing a lot of these guys starting to come over now, and they're not just opponents anymore. They're coming over and they're making money, big time money. They're getting contracts, all this stuff. So
I think Gennadiy opened up a lot of doors because of his success, because of his TV ratings that we were getting on HBO. He really opened up a lot of doors where, a lot of people, when I had the meetings, I remember like yesterday when I was meeting with HBO and meeting with Showtime, we were basically begging just to get an opportunity to put Gennadiy on a television platform.
Well, people forget those days. A lot of people don't know. I mean, we've talked, but a lot of people, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom. I just want to get this out there. A lot of people don't know that you guys went through that process. They think I think some people just have this notion that you signed Gennadiy, came over here, was fighting for millions and millions of dollars on HBO. And it's not like that. He was barely covering costs up front.
There were fights where he didn't make any money, not necessarily on HBO, but when he fought down in, he fought in Panama a couple of times. He fought in Ukraine. I remember we fought on the K2 show in Ukraine with Basil Gurov. It was basically, he was just fighting so that he can make title defenses and stay active. And then we got the big break on HBO, and that only happened because Daniel Gill pulled out. We had cornered Felix Sturm. I think you remember that Sturm had gotten so many exceptions from the WBA, as Gennadiy was the mandatory challenger for over 2 years. And then finally it was, okay, either you make a unification fight or you have to fight Triple G. And so he offered Daniel Gill, I remember the numbers exactly, he offered $600,000 for Daniel Gill to go over to Germany. If we could have gotten another champion to fight Triple G for that amount of money when he was on HBO, I mean, it was just it was crazy the way Triple G changed the economics of that whole middleweight division. But anyway, so he jumped out of the fight with Pirog, and because he figured Sturm would be an easier fight in Germany, which turned out to be the case. He won that fight, and Pirog was coming off the big knockout over Danny Jacobs, so nobody wanted to fight him. And so we told HBO, yeah, there's no problem, we'll fight him. And then Pirog got injured, and then Artie Kalulu was the promoter of that show, and Artie tried everything to get us to turn down the fight. When Pirog pulled out, he reduced the money, saying, well, HBO is paying less, which probably wasn't the case. But then also, he got the completely opposite style. Pirog was a huge right-handed puncher, and he gets this boxer European champion Proxa,
Yeah.
coincidentally also was from Poland, and mover, southpaw. A lot of fighters. It was 2 weeks before a fight, or I don't know how long it was, maybe a month before the fight. You're training. I think it was maybe 3 weeks before. You're training for a right-handed fighter. You got sparring right-handed, and then you switch to southpaw. And most of the guys are, I'm not going to fight this guy. And Gennadiy didn't care at that time. He's just like, yeah, I'll fight anyone. He made his HBO debut, but that's the sacrifices he went through. And then as soon as he had that spectacular knockout on HBO, then it's like, oh, okay, the fans want to see more of him. And I think some of the backlash that you mentioned, you don't get it until you get to a certain point. But
right.
I think the problem that a lot of the fans, or not a lot, some of the fans, some selected fans and fighters, that Triple G actually became more popular than some American fighters. In fact, some American gold medalists who just weren't as entertaining or weren't as active as Triple G. Gennadiy just wanted to fight. He was like a fighting machine. He was up in camp in Big Bear, sacrificing time with his family. But he was fighting 5 times, 4 times, 3 times a year, very active. He was always the most active champion at that level. And I always put that out there publicly, press releases and things of that nature. But, he was active because he was willing to go to Monte Carlo and fight in a smaller venue for a lower amount of money, but he's making the title defenses and knocking guys out. I mean, people kind of pan the Ishida fight. But if you look at Ishida, knocked out James Kirkland. He went to Moscow to fight, or Russia to fight Pirog, who was knocking everyone out. He couldn't knock him out. And then Gennadiy knocked him halfway through the ropes. Mm-hmm. So, those are the type of fights, his activity, and that just increased legend of Triple G. And now people, come to me all the time and say, oh, I got the next Triple G from Kazakhstan. And I'm like, well, there really is only one Triple G. So, it went from, getting back to your point, people not knowing, a lot of people didn't even know where Kazakhstan was before, Triple G came over here, or, we had the experience with the Klitschko from Ukraine. Yeah, but Kazakhstan was even a step further removed, because Vladimir had won the gold medal in the Olympics here in Atlanta, and he was a heavyweight, so that made things a lot easier for them. But for Gennadiy from Kazakhstan, and his English wasn't that great, especially when he first came over here. It was really a hard job building him, and I think that's where some of the resentment came in. It's like, how is a guy from Kazakhstan who doesn't speak English that well, and he's selling more tickets, he's getting higher ratings on TV than some of the American guys? And I know that was a problem. If you wonder why he only appeared on Ring Magazine one time back then, and there was that mentality back then of, we need to put on an American fighter on Ring Magazine instead of someone from Kazakhstan, which has totally changed now with look at Lomachenko, look at Usyk. Now it's like so many of these guys that Gennadiy kind of opened the doors for, but they're tremendous fighters from those Eastern Bloc countries.
Yeah, I think, like I said, we're seeing a wave, and now you're going to start to see these guys from Uzbekistan, the Madrimovs, the Bektabolis, these guys. We talked a little bit. Of course, we talked about Triple G, Chocolatito, Bohacek. Do you have any young prospects that you have maybe just signed, or guys that you're talking to that you want to just shout out that you think fans need to see?
Sure, I think everyone needs to keep an eye on Adrian Montoya, who we just signed from Mexico. He actually kind of randomly came onto the show. That's the beauty about the Hollywood Fight Night series. It's really developed for, Triple G Promotions has, does the big shows. Triple G shows are some of the biggest shows in the world. But in order to develop fighters, I wanted to start this Hollywood series where, they can fight 4 times a year. In fact, the last 2 years we did 5 shows at Hollywood. I think we're going to cut that back down to 4 this year. But to give the local fighters some activity, and then you can build it. Even a Brian Sabayo, who's a world-class fighter, who had a great amateur career, or Bohacek also, you give him some activity, and then you can see, this guy looks like he's proving himself. Does he want to, is a larger promotional company going to want to, work with him, kind of like as a testing ground? And Sabayo fought at the Hollywood show, and then fought on a couple Triple G shows at the Garden last year, and fought tough guys. He sold a lot of tickets. He did everything you're supposed to do. But those are kind of like, the developmental grounds. So that's what Adrian Montoya, he was going to be on that March show that got canceled. But definitely keep an eye on him. He's very dedicated, seems very focused, one of those exciting setting fighters, and I mean, that's really the only recent sign. I mean, there's a lot of other great fighters that fight on the Hollywood show. George Navarro, he's a lighter guy, 115 pounder, but he's exciting. Adrian Corona, a lot of guys that are coming up. They're there to keep an eye on. Sabayo, naturally, I think he had a breakout year last year, and he's one of those guys that really rises to the occasion when he's at a spotlight under the bright lights of Madison Square Garden on a Triple G show in a tough fight. A lot of guys have a tendency to freeze, in the big moment, and it's like a make or break moment. And Brian Sabayo really came out impressively. And fighters, they have to take a risk. They have to take a risk to get on a show like that. But if you pass that test, then all of a sudden your career is light years ahead. And that's what, same thing with Gennadiy. Like, he was fighting the toughest available guys that would actually get in the ring with him at that time. And the results then, kind of speak for themselves. He wasn't just beating guys, majority decisions or unanimous decisions, 12-round fights. They're boring. He was knocking guys out. It was almost like the Mike Tyson effect, where people would pay a lot of money to go see Mike fight, and he would knock guys out in the first round, second round, third round, whatever it was. But you never heard anyone complain about it. It was the same thing with Triple G. He had a lot of early knockouts in his career. Like I'm pretty sure you were at the Rubio fight the first time he fought in L.A.
Yeah.
At the StubHub Center, and he knocked out Rubio like in 2 rounds. And Rubio was kind of a journeyman at that point. Still a world-class fighter, but wasn't like anyone was writing home about him. But he happened to be a Mexican opponent, and just fit perfect for that particular thing. That particular show, and we broke the sales record. The number of people at that venue.
Yeah,
and
the
a
crowd.
great atmosphere.
I remember the crowd atmosphere for that fight was just something else, man. Tom, I'm looking here at the time. I promised I'd only keep you on for 20 minutes. I've kept you on for twice
That's okay.
as long.
I always like talking.
But
I always like talking to you, Michael. Oh, I wanted to compliment you, by the way. I know you did the Samir Azizi's podcast, and yours was one of the best interviews. Are very entertaining. So that was that was
thank
nice
you.
To listen to.
It was weird being on the other side, being interviewed. It was fun. It was a lot of fun. So I appreciate that, Tom. Well, thank you so much, and we'll definitely do it again in the future once the boxing world gets back going. But until then, my friend, stay safe.
All right, I appreciate that. Yeah, stay safe out there. We miss you out here in California. I remember we used to go to that cigar bar in Santa Monica all the time with Steve Tam and Doug Fisher and the guys. Mike, that was also one of my favorite shows. But it'll be good to see you guys in person at one of these shows coming up. And stay safe out there in Georgia.
All right, will do. Have a good night.
Thanks
again,
Tom.
Mike. All right, thanks.
Bye.
There he goes, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Tom Loeffler. Awesome talk. That's the thing about Tom. He's always willing to chat, and he'll tell you. He has a way of giving you exactly his honest opinion, telling you what's on his mind without dissing other people, even though he might be critical. So you guys heard during that interview, you heard, he took a little dig at Andre Ward, but he didn't say anything untrue. A little dig at Canelo, but he didn't say anything untrue. He keeps it. He's just very, very good at keeping it professional, keeping it even keel, while still telling you the truth about some shit that some people don't necessarily want to hear. We got a call here. Guys, by the way, if you want to call in, jump on here. We got one call here I'll jump to real quick. Any of you other guys want to chat, get on the line. 773, you're on TNC. Go.
Man, good interview with Tom. Great stuff there. I want to touch on this UFC event because I was watching a lot of people were critical of the striking in MMA. And it's funny, if you watch the decorated kickboxer, Jairzinho Rosenstruck, he looked like the sloppy wrestler. People like to brag on just a bunch of wrestlers with sloppy hands. And if you look at the main event, main and co-main event, it's all 4 wrestlers come from wrestling backgrounds. And they look like the polished strikers, the wrestlers. Someone like Justin Gaethje, the combinations he was throwing, you get a nice stiff jab that was the final sequence to put Tony Ferguson away. Henry Cejudo, lightning fast. These guys look like polished strikers. So I just want to get your thoughts on that. What do you think?
to be honest with you, the only fight that I saw any clips from was the heavyweight fight between, is it Ngannou or Ngannou? Francis Ngannou.
I call him Franny.
Okay, that's a lot easier. All right, Franny. I saw a little bit of that fight. I didn't see the rest of the card. Had it been on regular ESPN, I maybe would have checked it out. But, the fact is on pay-per-view, I'm not a big UFC guy, so I did see some of that fight. Look, what I tell people is, because this argument comes up a lot about comparing UFC to boxing, or MMA, I should say, to boxing. To me, they're just two completely different sports. I think it's right. It's the correct term to call what MMA fighters do striking, because I don't see it as punching. They don't get full extension. They're squared up a lot of the time. They're not turning over on the punches. They're not getting proper leverage. They're not throwing with the right angles. They're not putting their legs into it. They're not turning over and putting their core into it most of the time. But because in that sport, you can't often do it that way. You have to be more squared up. You have to have a lower center of gravity because you have to prepare for takedowns. It's just a different sport. So somebody could be a very, very good elite level striker in MMA, but that don't mean dick in a boxing ring. Just like in a boxing ring, you might have a guy who's a very, very crafty inside fighter who's good at kind of mauling and grappling. I'm thinking of a guy like Bernard Hopkins. Floyd Mayweather had some skill with that. They're good on the inside grappling and mauling when a guy's, close and they hold and push and get a guy where they want him. That don't mean dick in an MMA cage. So it's just two very different sports. And I think that you just cannot compare MMA fighters striking to a boxer's punching. It just doesn't compare. And that's my opinion. Now, I should state, I've trained a lot in boxing, but a lot of people don't know this. I was in the Marine Corps, and during that time, I did do judo and jiu-jitsu for a year. I do have a very little experience. It was only a year in that world. So I understand the basics of it pretty well. Nowhere near as much as boxing, of course. I'm very much a novice. So I'm not just, pulling this out of my ass. It's just, it's an honest opinion I have because of what I see.
Yeah, I completely understand with the, you can't really set your feet because you're worried about, if you set down on your punches, the guy's going to double leg you, put you on your back. So
right.
Completely different sports. You're right.
And you might have an opponent. I'm sorry to cut you off, but you might have an opponent rushing in to try to do a takedown or whatever it is. Their chin's up in the air. They're squared up. And I see a lot of times 99% of the knockouts in MMA, it's not because the guy threw a really good strike. It's because the opponent is not being defensively responsible, at least the way I would see it from a boxing perspective. It's just, again, it's a different sport. The fundamentals are just very different.
Yeah, in that Ngannou-Rosenstruck fight, I mean, Teddy at this point is this out. The guy went straight backwards, his chin straight up in the air. It looked like amateur hour, and this guy's supposed to be some decorated kickboxer. It's like, man.
Yeah, but was he a world champion kickboxer? Did he win world championships? Because I'll admit, I didn't know who he was, but today I looked him up on Wiki, and I know he had like 100, 200 fights, but I didn't see him being this big decorated world champion. Now, you correct me if I'm wrong, because I just didn't see that.
Yeah, I'm not sure either if he was a world champion. I just know that there's a lot of hype regarding his striking. I don't know if he's a world champion. No, you're right.
But as I stated at the beginning of the show, man, and again, they do this in boxing. They do it in every sport. The narrative that's being driven and pushed from the promoter, from the network, from the commentators, that is not for the nuanced, educated, diehard fan. That commentary is for the casual. That's for, as I call it, Joe Sixpack, who's at Buffalo Wild Wings getting some chicken or whatever with his buddies after a week at the office. And oh shit, the MMA fight's on. Turn that shit up. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. So when Joe Rogan says, this guy's an elite level striker, he's a decorated kickboxer, 200 fights. But if you start looking into the 200 fights, you see it was, again, he lived in North Dakota and fought a bunch of guys. I know it's not that guy in this case. But I've seen it before where they're like, this guy had over 100 amateur fights. Yeah, in Oregon. Okay, I could probably beat 90 of the guys this guy fought, and I'm nobody. So you have to always pay. And again, they do this in boxing too. Absolutely do it in boxing. But just pay attention to those narratives. Always look beyond that.
Oh, agree 100%. And my last point regarding Ngannou versus Wilder. You know what it seems in this heavyweight? It crosses over in boxing and MMA. If you're a big, powerful athlete, man, it could take you far. It could take you really far in boxing and MMA because Ngannou, he's not technical. All he does is throw these powerful hooks. He gasses after a round. We saw that in the Stipe Miocic fight. He doesn't have a good gas tank. But man, it's like the level of talent in the heavyweight division. It just seems, at least in the UFC, I know in boxing there's a lot of good up and comers, but in UFC, man, it's all you need. It's just a big, powerful athlete with knockout power, and now he's the number one contender. It's kind of insane to think, but I'll get your last thoughts on that, and then I'll head out.
That's a great point. I remember Brock Lesnar went over into MMA briefly, and I know he wasn't the greatest or anything, but did he win the championship? I can't remember if he won the championship, but I know he did well.
Yeah, he won it.
He did. Okay. So here, case in point, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't me putting down MMA, UFC. I've been accused of being a hater. I swear I'm not. I respect all fighters. Those guys are awesome athletes. They get in the cage. They put it all on the line. But Brock Lesnar, a guy who couldn't make the practice squad in the NFL because he tried out for some NFL teams, right? Fell just short of practice squad level. Did the WWE for a while, which is, let's call that what it is. It's a fake sport, but it's fun. We all have a lot of fun with it. And those guys are definitely athletes. But it's scripted, right? It is what it is. And he was able to go into MMA and win the UFC heavyweight championship. Now, in boxing, we've seen a million guys that were former football players that played college football, maybe a little NFL, right pretty much at the level Brock Lesnar played football. And they went into boxing and they haven't got anywhere near a heavyweight title, let alone being the heavyweight champion of the world. Gerald Washington is one of the latest examples, but there's a million guys I can bring up. That just kind of shows you the different levels. Now, to your point.
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Before I cut you off, the thing with Brock Lesnar, though, is he's an NCAA champion wrestler. I think that plays a big factor for why he wasn't just like a WWE guy or something. He was a legit amateur wrestler, NCAA champion. So I think that's the reason why it translated.
That's a great point.
I mean, if you look at Wilder, though, you got to look at Wilder. Look at how well he did. And he got 10 title defenses, and I mean, he's just a big, strong athlete. That's no technique. So I think it works both ways.
Well, the difference with Wilder, and I said this before, I do think basketball skill set lends itself a little more to boxing, and American football lends itself a little more to MMA. But the difference with Wilder is, and I don't want to make this an anti-Wilder comment, but when he stepped up and fought his first elite level heavyweight, what happened? He lost the first fight against Fury, was lucky to get away with a draw. And then in the second fight with a 100% version of Fury, you saw what happened. So you could say 10 title defenses and all that, but again, I'll go back to the point I made a few minutes ago. That's a narrative being pushed by the management, by the promoters, all that. If look at who those title defenses were against. Now, I agree with you. He's a big, strong, powerful guy who developed a right hand, and it worked out for him. But I think to a certain degree, he's been figured out now. And if he goes in there against Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, that level of heavyweight, he's probably going to come up short most of the time. But you're right. I do stand corrected. Brock Lesnar, I remember that. I know he wrestled in college. And I think Ronda Rousey did as well. Ronda Rousey did judo, I believe, and was an Olympian. So I understand how some of that translates. I actually think having a wrestling background in MMA is much more important than a boxing background or anything like that. It just seems to translate better to the rules over there. But again, I'll go back to it. Look, man, it's two different sports. It's two different things. And it's okay. We can have two different worlds.
I agree. All right, Mike, I'll let you get to it, but thanks for taking my call.
All right, brother. Thanks a lot, man. Good stuff. Great call.
Okay, you too.
That was a really, really good call. All right, 951. You're on the neutral corner. Go.
Big Mike.
What up?
This is Mike Mendiola from Gladiator Gym in
Mendiola, what's up, man? How you doing?
How are you, brother? I'm good, man. I'm finally calling in.
Yeah, first time. All right. What you got? What you got for me, my man?
So I work with some fighters, and I did watch the Pettis versus Cerrone. Is that his name? Cowboy Cerrone or Cerrone? I did watch that fight on Saturday.
They had Cowboy Cerrone on that card? Didn't he just get knocked out?
It was during the prelims.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he got knocked out by McGregor, in a minute or something?
Yeah. He's been knocked out like twice in a row now. Okay.
Anyways, that was probably, I think I tweeted something about it. It was about my third or fourth fight I've ever watched from start to finish, because, we're, obviously, we're all starving for some kind of combat sports or sports in general. I'm watching in the mornings. I'm watching Swedish harness racing on TVG because there's nothing on.
Oh shit!
Anyways, and like I said, I made a comment. Maybe a little bit ill-advised, but I said I know some 4-round pro fighters that, in terms of striking technique, are so far more advanced than those guys. But I understand the nuances and the semantics with, like you guys discussed earlier, being able to throw a punch and then, be prepared, to counter like a takedown. But really though, Mike, I mean, the striking from these UFC guys is really just not even on par with some amateurs, some decorated amateurs that I've worked with and that I see train on a daily basis.
I've seen, and again, this isn't putting him down, because it's just speaking honestly. I've seen teenagers and the amateurs that would fuck up this heavyweight guy, Ngannou, in a boxing match. I'm talking kids that would knock him out. And it's not, I'm not bashing that dude, because in a wrestling match, he'd crush just about every boxer on earth in 30 seconds. It's just two different things. Somebody in the chat, SSB28, said that Cowboy Cerrone is 4-8 in his last 12 fights. And he fought Conor McGregor coming off either 1 or 2 straight losses, and McGregor dominated him, and those fans went nuts. And I just remember thinking, man, Dana White is a genius, because if one of the top 5 fighters, I was just talking with Tom Loeffler, Gennadiy Golovkin wants to fight Kamil Zemerda, and he's getting bashed by a lot of people in the boxing community for that, because they want to go forward and fight the mandatory. He's way more qualified and in way better condition and shape right now than Cowboy Cerrone was when he fought Conor McGregor. And that was a fucking pay-per-view. But their fans ate it up and loved it. And it was all over SportsCenter. It's just amazing to me, the double standards, man. But I'm sorry. I'm talking over you here. I'll shut up.
No problem. No, very well put. Good points. I mean, when I saw the Cerrone, by the way, I thought that Cowboy guy eked out the decision, but for some reason, I know there's boxing, or issues in boxing scoring, but the fight that I saw, I mean, one guy had it, I think 30-27 for Cerrone, or 29-20, whatever, 29-28, and then the other 2 had it for Pettis. But I mean, I clearly saw the Cowboy guy just eking out a decision, because to me, he was just more effective. He had the the few takedowns that, and I don't know if you get points for takedowns, but he's the only one that was able to secure takedowns of the other guy. And like I said, it just, I said, man, and this guy is, like you said, coming off of that 1 minute destruction from McGregor, or however long it lasted. And this guy Pettis apparently used to be a title holder, and they just, I mean, it was an even fight, but I thought the Cowboy guy pulled it out. But and not, they're, like you said, they're athletes. They're in their own right, they're great combatants, and they train hard. But I'm sick of the whole boxing UFC comparison. In fact, the first time I ever was exposed to you was years ago when you did the whole Ronda Rousey thing. That's the first time first video I ever saw of Montero on boxing, and it was brilliant. And from that moment on, I've been following. And then I was lucky enough to meet you, about a year back and stuff. We spent some time over with Molina and whatever. But yeah, man. I mean, I think at some point it needs to stop, the comparisons, but I don't think it really will ever stop.
It's a way for them to market the product. Mentality. I honestly think Dana White has tapped into something, and because he does it a lot. He constantly disses boxing. And look, there's plenty to criticize, but don't talk about the damn athletes. Talk about the business and the issues, there. But I just, I remember talking about that Cowboy McGregor fight, when McGregor beat him. And I talked to a few UFC friends of mine about it. I wanted their honest opinion because I'm like, man, let me ask you about this. This dude's lost all these fights. And these guys were saying, basically, we don't care because Cowboy's a legend and he was the man back in the day. So we just want to see the fight. And I'm thinking in my head, like, I understand that to a certain degree, but you're almost buying into what Dana White's telling you and just believing it. If there was a fighter right now who had lost 8 of their last 12 fights and anyone in the top 10 pound for pound fought him and then did it on pay-per-view, could you imagine the backlash? But I said that. Go ahead.
Here's a good analogy. Could you imagine if Canelo was offered a voluntary defense and he decided to go ahead and fight James Kirkland? It'd probably be on par with what we saw.
That's
McGregor versus the Cerrone guy, and I didn't watch that fight.
That would be perfect. Fighting James Kirkland right now, okay? If he was told,
exactly.
or someone like that, and then it's on pay-per-view. It's brilliantly marketed, and I almost compare the media machine and everything behind UFC. To me, it's similar to what the NFL does, to what the NBA does, where it's casual fans tuning in because it's on TV and they buy into the narratives that are pushed. And I'm not dissing any of that, okay? It's just part of what they do, and they do it very, very well. And boxing fans, to a certain degree, were pricks because not that there aren't casual fans, because of course there are, but day to day, week to week, the people watching the club shows, the mid-level shows, it's degenerates like us. So because we're so knowledgeable, sometimes we're pricks about it, and
we're a little bit of elitist, I guess. Yeah,
there's the right word. Yeah, maybe boxing fans are more elitist. Even though what's funny is the demographics of boxing in comparison to MMA, we're the poorer sport. We come from the inner cities. We come from the immigrant classes. You go, dude. I'm always amazed. You go to the suburbs of any city in America. That's where the MMA gyms are. They're in the suburbs. They're not in the city. Like we're from, where the boxing gyms are in the working class neighborhoods in the city. You go out to Orange County, and you know what I'm talking about, dude. There's that one huge gym out there. That's where the MMA gyms are. Yet, it's boxing fans who are the elitist pricks. Anyway.
Yeah, but speaking about boxing, I'll just make one other brief comment. But in regards to COVID, with the whole, how it's shutting down boxing and stuff, we're actually, over at Gladiator Gym, Johnny's gym, I'm actually in the process right now putting together a COVID disclosure, like a waiver type thing, because, going forward, we're just going to have to monitor each and every person that comes into that gym. It doesn't matter if it's a trainer, anybody that comes into spar or train or whatever. We're just going to have to really this whole thing has just changed just the landscape of everything. And then boxing gyms have been hit hard. I know you talked about it about a week or two ago. You talked about, and I think you posted something earlier today about a gym in LA closing down, or on the verge of closing down.
I've totally forgot about talking about that on the show. I was going to talk about it at the top of the show, but my main gym.
Well, there you go. There's your segue.
Yeah, there's my segue. Appreciate it. It's sad news, man. The gym that I trained at, I trained at a bunch of different gyms out there, but my home gym, if you will, that was literally like 3 miles from my house, my condo.
Yeah.
City of Angels Boxing closed. And I talked to them over the weekend, and I said, is this because of COVID? And they said, yeah. It's basically like the fucking governor wouldn't let them run and operate. And for 2 months, without getting that revenue, most gyms are hanging by a thread. And then there's a lot of people that are scared to go back anyway. They had to close, bro. And that was a very successful gym.
Yeah.
So,
well, our gym's private. Our gym's private, so we have to rely on people coming in and monthly memberships and whatnot. But still, though, it really has put a halt to a couple of young, promising pros. Careers are just completely on hold right now. Robert being the age that he is, he's not old. Robert's in his early 60s, but he's in that demographic that has to really, watch his health and stuff. So he hasn't been able to get to the gym at all. And a buddy of mine I talked to an hour ago in the music industry. I do music as well. He's on the verge of losing his rehearsal studio, and he reached out to my band and a few other bands that have been, regulars there over the last several years, and is asking us, hey, the only way I'm going to keep the gym alive is if I do lockouts, which basically means we can purchase a room for a set duration, like a 30-day, basically like a 30-day cycle, to keep because you can't have the constant flow of all these just different people coming in, different bands and whatnot. So it's not just boxing gyms; it's hitting, music studios, rehearsal studios. But that's a whole nother topic. Maybe I don't want to take up any more of your time, Mike. I appreciate the call. It's nice catching up with you. I hope you and Tiff are staying healthy. And next time you're out having a beer at a restaurant, think of us here, because we still can't do that.
Oh, man. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for calling in, bro. And look, next time we're out there, we'll get the ladies together and we'll all go out, get a few drinks. Hopefully at some point in the future, it'll open back up out there, and we'll definitely do that.
And you come to the gym, we'll get you some sparring, man.
Hell
I got a heavyweight from Rivers. I got a heavyweight from Riverside. He's a good fighter. He's a young kid, but you guys need to do some sparring. I'll work your corner.
Hell yeah, dude. All right. Sounds good,
Mike.
brother. All right, man. Have a good one.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
All right, let's jump to another call here. 353. You're on the neutral corner. Go.
How's it going, Mike? How are you?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing great. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Hit the like button. Support the show. Promotes the growth and visibility.
Mark speaks the truth. Hit the like button.
It's true. It is true. Especially because YouTube do everything to keep you below 10K.
Hell yeah, they do.
Push that, guys.
Yeah. What's up with that?
Push that. You're stopping people from growing. You know yourself. But yeah. Okay. So. Random ass question, nothing to do with anything, but I was just looking at something and I wanted your thoughts on it. Do you think the International Boxing Hall of Fame have started a dangerous precedent, by putting in certain fighters into the Hall of Fame? You've got Gennadiy in there, I know people mention him, you've got Vitali in there, who I don't think should be. I know people will kill me for that. And you've got Barry McGuigan in there. I know he did a lot for human relations in Ireland and UK, but he shouldn't be in there. And you have players like Lou Salika, Eddie Booker, young Peter Jackson, etc., who are not in the hall. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't know what to think about the hall, man. I've never been up there. I've had opportunities to go up there for that week and everything, and I've thought about it. But to me, I kind of don't get it. Being way up there in upstate New York, I don't know if the hall belongs there. I know there's a lot of history and everything, but as far as the criteria for, every year a certain amount of fighters gets in, and then they have the non-competitive category. They have several different categories, which I don't mind. I think that if you've made a significant contribution to the sport, and as a writer or as a commentator, cool. I think there should be a spot for you. That boxing's not the only sport that does that. But by saying, okay, I'm trying to think, is it 5 fighters a year, 3 fighters? I can't remember.
5.
Is it 5 still? Okay.
Yeah. I think it's 5 on the short nominee and 3. So
5
the short
and 3,
nominee,
yeah.
5 and then,
So
it's 5 short nominee and then 3 actually get in.
Okay, yeah, I think that that's just dumb. I think some years there should be 1, some years there might be 5, but you should have to get a certain percentage of the vote. And, there should be a certain threshold. I don't know what that is. But a lot of times the writers that vote, they have biases. So how many people who vote at the International Boxing Hall of Fame are from the northeast part of the United States? At least historically, a lot of them. So I think they could maybe diversify the crowd a little bit, and they could find a different way, because voting in, a certain amount of fighters every year, even if it's a weak year, that sucks. And then if it's a really strong year and you have 5 guys that truly belong there, and we've had years like that, it sucks that some of them have to wait.
Absolutely. Now, let's get a little bit more back onto the topic, right? So the UFC happened this weekend. I enjoyed it. I thought it was okay. It didn't kill my desire for boxing. I'm not going to be picking UFC over boxing anytime soon. And Ngannou's gotten crazy hype off of that knockout, hasn't he? A lot of hype. A lot of people are saying, oh, this dude would knock out all these heavyweights. I thought about a fantasy crossover fight, if you'd like to hear it, between Ngannou and a certain fighter. Right. I think Ngannou should get into the ring with Dave Allen. I know that sounds funny. But I genuinely, no, I've seen Ngannou fight before, and he gasses after one round.
That
if
kind
he
of
can't
muscle,
knock out Dave Allen in a
they're
round,
not doing VADA testing over there, but he's a big guy.
If he can't knock out Allen in a round, could Dave Allen knock out Francis Ngannou? I think he could.
Absolutely he could.
And I don't think he'd knock out Dave Allen in a round because Dillian White went 12 with him. And I don't think he hits much harder with full gloves, everything, and drug testing than Dillian White.
I think if that was a 10-round fight, absolutely, Ngannou would get stopped. It just, and again, I have to say it because, I have to preface everything. If Dave Allen wrestled in an MMA cage, Ngannou would beat him. So, it's 2020, so I have to say that before, it doesn't matter. I'm going to still take shit. But I'm with you, man. People do not understand the cardio requirement for boxing. It's crazy. I'm saying this as a former Marine. I would get up and we'd run a 5K before breakfast, and then we'd go out and run some more. Every day. I played a lot of sports. I've been in the military. Training in boxing is the hardest shit I've ever done. It's not easy. And these guys think, I can throw a punch. I can go do this. Nah, it's not that easy. It's just not.
No, it's not. I mean, look, I used to box and then I got out of it. And, I've gotten more into powerlifting. If you got me to do 6 rounds right now, I'd be fucked after 4. I'd be fucked. I'd be straight up.
Powerlifting is the worst thing you could do for boxing. It's like the opposite.
Yes, I know. But if I hit you, I'm hurting you.
Yeah, there you go. That matters. That does matter.
That's why, actually, before I go, have you heard this, right? So, have you heard about Hafthor, Julius Bjornsson, and Eddie Hall?
No.
All right, so Hafthor Julius Bjornsson was the world's strongest man in 2018, Eddie Hall.
Oh, no, yeah. Okay, yeah, I have heard of this. They're going to fight on...
The mountain, yeah. They're going to fight next year in September or November, one of the 2 months next year, September.
That's right.
I think it's September 2021. I like the idea now of 2 guys who have fuck all skill. I like this idea who are completely novice in the sport of boxing, getting into the ring. Between them, combined, they weigh over 800 pounds, and the 2 of them have lifted over 1,100 pounds off of the ground to their waist. I like that idea because I know a lot of people talk about different people fighting in boxing and YouTubers. This is 2 guys who are technically strength athletes who have a legit beef with each other over the 2017 World's Strongest Man thing, because Hafthor thought Eddie Hall got a little bit of a pass on the lifts, and he was deducted reps, which cost him the World's Strongest Man on the points total, right? I like this. I really like it because these are just 2 big, massive fat fucks who can, let's be honest, would throw you and me through a wall if they got their hands on us. They would. They're and you know yourself with World's Strongest Man, there's very little drug testing involved. Oh, yeah. These guys are on D-ball, fucking testosterone. They're on trend. They're on everything in the world. They're on HGH galore. I'm sorry. Eddie Hall in his peak was 433 pounds at 6'3". And even though he looked fat, that was just solid.
Jesus.
It was solid.
Well, Mark, I'll tell you.
And he was pulling 500 kilos. Get the fuck out of here. 1,102 pounds.
I am so much more interested in something like that, seeing a freak show like that, than I am about seeing Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather, or Conor McGregor, Manny Pacquiao, because we know what that is. That's just easy money, cash grab. But this fight, I didn't recognize the names at first, but actually somebody asked me, a listener to the show asked me about that a week or 2 ago. And I looked it up and I saw these guys. I'm like, holy fuck, I'm just looking at them. I would love to just watch those 2 beat the shit out of me. That would just be, and the skill is going to be so bad. They're going to win after a round, but they're both kind of the same. They're in the same boat. So I think that it probably is going to be a lot of fun, and they have a ton of time to hype it up.
But even if they're winded after a round and they're just swinging their arms, full well one of those swings could send the other dude over the rope.
Yeah. God damn. Well,
that's the great thing about it. I don't say this, but that's got brain damage written all over it, doesn't it? It really does. One of those dudes punches you, you go like no tech. It doesn't even. I know technique matters a lot in boxing, but when you're that strong, and you've no skills, both of you, it's even keel.
We would get to see. I guess we'd have an example of that playing out live, and just to see what happens. I mean, I think that shit would be a lot of fun. I actually would watch that. Right, I'll admit that. Now, if they price it at $80 or some shit, but if they price the pay-per-view the right way, that might be a fun one to just do like a live commentary and just call the fights on my channel and just have fun with it. Because I don't think either guy's
you could
pretending.
Make good punches.
Neither guy's going to pretend to be a boxer. That's the thing that annoys me about some of these crossover fights and stuff is Conor McGregor is trying to convince people that he's a boxer. It's like, you're not. You're a great MMA fighter. You're very, very good in that discipline. But you're not a boxer, dude. Stop it. But I get it. They had to market it that way, yada, yada, yada. But with these two guys, they're not trying to be boxers. They just want to beat the shit out of each other. And you said they weigh over 400 pounds. How much? 800 pounds? Yeah, I'd watch that. Well, that'd be hilarious.
Half tour, like right now, Eddie Hall, he slimmed down since he retired from World's Strongest Man, right? At his peak, he was 433. Right now, Jesus. As he says himself, he's a slender 385.
God, that
Haftor
I feel bad for his heart.
Jesus. Yes. Haftor just pulled 1104, and he was 205 kilo, or just over 440 pounds.
Man, there was some big dudes. Those are two mountains. Yeah, I would watch that.
That's
I'll admit
820
right
pounds.
I would watch
820 pounds. Anyway, I'll let you go, Mike. You've got a super chat pledge, by the way. Hit the like button, guys. Come on, hit the like.
All right, thanks a lot, Mark. Have a good one, man. I love Mark's calls. All right, Trent with the super chat. Super chat. I was going to say super Trent. Trent with the super chat. Thank you so much, my man. Awesome super chat pledge. He says, "Yo, Ergashev and Vladimir Shishkin look great up in your city, Detroit, my hometown, under Sugar Hill. Who's your number one prospect? Between those two guys, I like Ergashev. In fact, I have a few friends that stay plugged into the boxing scene up there in Detroit. And I remember seeing, I think Ergashev fought on a ShowBox card earlier this year. And he looked really, really good. And I remember texting a buddy of mine up there and saying, dude, because he didn't know Ergashev yet. He just hadn't seen him yet. And I said, you need to go to the gym and check this kid out. He's the best prospect in Detroit right now. I truly believe. And Ergashev is from over in, I think he's an Uzbek. He's an Uzbek guy, which, hey, what have I been saying about the Uzbeks? But he's based in Detroit now. I think Dmitry Salita promotes him. And he's going to, I'd love for him to start actually fighting in Detroit, but he's going to continue training there. I think he's the best prospect in Detroit right now, based there. And I think maybe, just maybe, if he has some success and brings some fights, to Detroit, maybe they can start building something there. There are real opportunities in Detroit right now because it's so cheap to run a gym there and everything. You have to get the community involved in going to the fights. But there's casinos in Detroit. There's gambling. It's a big sports community. In terms of sports, it's a big market. All the top sports are there. So I think that there's an opportunity for a Detroit-based fighter to bring something there. Ergashev has a chance. It just depends on what he wants to do. Great super chat, though. But he's saying, is the 100 to 147 pound division the deepest? Two divisions besides 154. And then he names Taylor, Gayasov, Ennis, Virgil Ortiz, Ramirez, Ergashev, Ivan Golub, Ugas, Spence, Crawford, and you can keep going. Man, I actually think 47 is a little possibly overrated in some people's minds. Very deep, very good division, but some people say it's the best in boxing. I don't know about that. 175 is pretty damn good right now. 175 is pretty damn straight, man. With Beterbiev at the top, and then you've got, of course, Bivol if he stays there. And then I think Benavidez at 68, Callum Smith at 68. Those guys are going to be at 75 very soon. So I think 75 is a good, solid division. Cruiserweight's always good. Superfly, bantamweight are strong. 22, 26 are strong. 35 is pretty damn good. Dude, look at the young talent at around 30, 35 right now. You've got Haney, Tank Davis, Ryan Garcia. Of course, you got Vasily Lomachenko. And, we know Teofimo Lopez is going to be at 140 pretty soon, but right now he's at 35. I don't know, dude. 35 in terms of young, up-and-coming talent right now. That might be the best division in boxing in terms of young guys. Now, they're going to be at 40, 47 soon enough. But right now, dude, that's a deep talent pool of young, good fighters who are on the cusp of breaking through. I agree with you that 54 has got some very good young guys right now. Madrimov, we talked about Bohacek earlier. He's going to do well. I think he's going to win a title in that division. And those guys are eventually, a lot of them, going to be moving to 60. I think Jarrett Hurd at some point. I think both Charlos will be at 60. You've got Andrade, you've got Canelo, you've got Golovkin, you've got Derevianchenko. People sleep on 160. That's a deep division, dude. One of the divisions that I think gets a little overrated too is 168. There's a couple of good guys at the very top, but you scroll down, it's not as thick as some would make you believe. 160, though, a lot of people sleep on that division. All right, let's get to a couple more calls. Man, we're going long today, guys. I hope you appreciate it. I know Tiff probably is making dinner and wants me to get upstairs and eat, but we're going long today. 317, you're on the neutral corner. Go.
Hey, what's up, big guy? It's Jack Alter.
What's up, Jack? How you doing, man?
I just got my high school diploma in the mail.
In the mail? Holy shit, dude.
Yes, sir.
That's so weird. Wow. So, did it come like official mail where you had to go sign for it and shit, or was it just in your mailbox, stuffed in your mailbox?
No. Well, I say mail, but really the bus came, to the bus stop, and, there was teachers in the back of the bus, and they, handed it to me saying, congratulations and stuff. So
your teacher, wearing a mask, I assume, handed you a diploma. Yeah. Man, 2020, man. Holy shit. Craziness. Well, Congratulations, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. Did you see my interview with Virgil Ortiz?
I have not seen it yet, but that's awesome. I will check that out.
Yeah, man. I wanted to talk to you about this because I talked to him about it. Man, let's forget boxing for a second. We know Triple G beat Canelo twice. We know Beterbiev is the best light. We know all that, right? We know all that. So let's talk burgers. I talked to
he likes the Whataburger.
Yeah, and then someone Hamed says Jack loves talking about Golovkin. You know it. But no, what's your best burger place? Because here in Indiana, Five Guys, that's my go-to. I love Five Guys.
Five Guys. Five Guys is good. Dude, that Whataburger down there in Texas, that shit's pretty legit, I gotta say. And I know, because I talked to Virgil about that. I asked him how it compares to In-N-Out, to Fatburger, and of course he's from Texas, so he likes Whataburger. In-N-Out, dude. Have you ever been to In-N-Out?
I have. November, 6 months ago. That was the only time I went.
I think I remember you tweeting about that. Did you tweet about it or something? Did you tweet about it or something?
Yeah, I did. And Ortiz responded.
Yeah, dude. In-N-Out, but you got to order the right thing. So Tiffany orders for me because what she orders isn't even on the menu. Fatburger's dope. If you are really hungry, get the triple XL at Fatburger, and you'll be good for about a day or two after that. Yeah, and if you eat that, they take your picture and put it on the wall. And there was one in Koreatown that I used to walk to, is 5 blocks from my house. And I go in there, and the bartender would hook up the drinks, and they had a patio where they'd have football games on and shit. We'd be out there just drinking, hanging out, getting a triple XL, and I'd kill that fucker. They'd take a Polaroid picture of me, put it on the wall next to the other 5 of them, and then across the street was an ice cream joint. And I'd go over there and eat a gallon of ice cream. Good times.
Dang. Yeah, I wanted to ask one boxing question because I'm about to get food in a second. Actually, man, I'm a growing kid. Got to get them.
Keep
eating,
get
them burgers.
Yep.
Yeah. I saw Clarissa Shields posting. You probably talked about this in the past. How she would say she'd give Golovkin a run for her money, and beat Thurman and Porter. I just want to ask you, how badly would you dominate Shields in sparring? I see your reaction on the screen.
Shields could probably fuck me up. All truth. Now, if I landed, landed, the thing is, I actually know dudes, friends of mine who have sparred her, and they tell me she's legit strong. She's a big girl, dude. She's a big girl. Now, for her to talk about Golovkin and, all these guys, that's ridiculous. Like, that's just, and again, if female boxing is this great sport and stop comparing it to men's boxing. Build your own thing. The constant comparisons to men's boxing drives me nuts. And it shows the insecurity that some female fighters and their promoters have to always do that. But yeah, I think, those sorts of comments are just stupid. But believe it or not, every time she tweets something like that, if you look at the responses, there's a bunch of people that are like, oh yeah, you'd fuck them up. Oh yeah, that believe it. It just is what it is.
Yeah, I don't want to get into any of the racist shit she said and how, this is your show. I could talk to you about this personally, but there's always going to be people disagree about like politics and things like that. But, Shields, I don't know how you to feel about this, but my friend Jordan was saying how he hopes Shields gets into a similar situation as Gerald McClellan.
Oh, Jesus Christ. No, I don't. We can't wish anything like that on somebody, man. That's not cool. That's not cool. Tell your boy that's not cool, man. I can't get with that. I can't get with that.
All right, I'm gonna get my food. Hit the
Blaze that hamburger, man. Go kill that.
Hit the like button.
All right, Jack.
All right. Talk to you later, man.
All
right, bye.
All right. A couple more quick calls, guys. Yeah, we're going here. Going on 2 hours today. All right, 441. You're on the neutral corner. Go. 441. Hello. I'm guessing this is a UK call, maybe.
Hello.
Yes. Hello. You're on the show.
Hey, it's Chris Bergen here.
Oh, hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Yeah, I've just got a quick question about. I'm a big UK fan, so. Just a question about who you think the top UK prospects are. We've got Dubois, Okoli, Cordina, Josh Kelly, Joshua Buatsi. I'm just thinking, who's your favorite?
I like Buatsi a lot. I like Kelly a lot, but I'm all in on the Danny Dubois hype train, my friend. That's the guy that we got to find out how he takes a shot. That's the one thing. But
absolutely,
I think he's 22. I mean, he's very young.
Yeah, if that, yeah.
Right? He's young. He has all the punches. He seems to have a very good head on his shoulders. Seems to be a smart guy. Gets it. And of course, we got to see how he looks against Joe Joyce if that fight still comes off.
Oh, I can't wait to see that fight.
Me too. I'm really excited for that one.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people are sleeping on that fight. Man, that's a really good, very important fight. Like, I'm really excited for that one. And I think he's going to win. It's going to be difficult, and he's going to have some scary moments, but I think he'll win. But, yeah, that to me, he's the top UK prospect right now.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Joshua Buatsi as well. I think he's definitely going to be a world champion in the future.
Absolutely. And I think Kelly will, too. I mean, Kelly has a chance as well. There's a few young guys. I mean, the UK is producing good talent from the small weights all the way up to the heavyweights now regularly. They're one of the best producers of talent in the sport right now. And there's some really good young guys right now. Josh Taylor, I still think a lot of people are sleeping on him. I think that he's going to be a damn good fighter as he ends up moving up in weight.
I think he sneaks into the top 10 pound for pound personally.
Yeah, we had that debate at Ring. We talked about that. I think we have him just outside, but you could absolutely make the argument. I think we put Pacquiao in rather than Taylor, but you can make the argument. You absolutely could that he's among the 10 best fighters. And talk about fights I can't wait to see. Him at some point. Him and Jose Ramirez are going to fight and sew up the whole 140-pound division. That's one of the best fights in boxing. I can't wait for that one.
Oh yeah, absolutely, yeah. You can make a case for either of those to win that fight.
Absolutely, that's why it's great.
Yeah. Anyway, cheers for the call, Mike. Anyway.
All right. Well, thank you, brother. It's good to finally have you call into the show, man. I hope you're doing well.
Yeah. Cheers, brother. Take care.
Cheers. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay, one more call here, guys. And then we're going to call it off here. 447. You're on the neutral corner. Go.
Hello, Mike. How's it going?
Good. How you doing, man?
Yeah, I've been busy as Ramadan, but I've seen your shows live. I'm going to try and re-listen to the Tom Loeffler interview. I was just wondering, I got a couple of questions. I was going to say, what do you think would more of an ideal thing would be? To get rid of the less belts, or do you think it'd be better, say, to cut down the weight classes? I think there's too many weight classes and too many belts, and I know this subject is kind of like ongoing, a lot of people talk about it all the time. But would you say something that you'd prefer one over the other?
Yes, that's a great question. It's something that's brought up a lot, and most boxing fans feel that less belts is the answer. My response is that less divisions is the answer. I did a video several years ago, look it up, where I think it's called The Junior and Super Divisions Are a Waste, something like that. And I talk about kind of the history of those divisions. They originally came around to kind of serve as catchweights, and then they became their own divisions because the sanctioned organizations learned, we can get more money. If we cut the junior and super divisions out of boxing tomorrow, the talent pool in the remaining, I think there'd be 10 divisions remaining. The talent pool would either double or triple in every division. And it wouldn't matter if there were 4 belts. It really wouldn't matter because the talent pool would be there. So just imagine, if you will, if, 108's gone, 115's gone, 122, 140, 154, 168 are gone. What that would do
I'd
to
keep
the sport.
The cruiserweight.
You have to keep cruiserweight.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. The guys on the Grueling Truth, I've debated them, and they think that it'd be better to go back to the old 8. I think 8 may be a bit too. I don't think those days are over. You can't go back to.
Human beings got bigger.
Too niche.
We need cruiserweight. Heavyweight needs to be 200 pounds. You can make an argument. We could even bump heavyweight up even further now. Some people have said maybe a super heavyweight division. I don't know. I think 10 divisions. Leave it at that. And I think it does. Boxing is so global, Ahmed. There's so many fighters, so many different promoters and jurisdictions. You kind of need multiple sanctioning organizations. One couldn't manage all the fighters. Yeah. So I don't mind.
I don't get the argument. I think 3 was probably ideal, because then you could get a champion, then you could maybe get a unified champion, and if he's got 3 belts, he's undisputed. I think with the 4, it just overcomplicates stuff a bit. I see the other argument as well. Some people say, how could there be more than 1 world champion? But
right.
I just think he's a version of a champion. I think as long as they all fight each other, the champions fight and they unify, that's the good thing. I think there are too many weight classes. I don't mind the super middleweight and super welterweight divisions. I think those divisions have done well. But if you look around a lot of the other divisions, I just personally think it's too many. I think there's 17 or 18. I personally think there should have been more than about 10 or 12 at max. And even then, I think you could make an argument.
I think 10 is enough, and again, you talk about, I agree, 154, 168, those, you usually get some really good fights. But if right now you cut those divisions out and all those guys at 54 had to move up to 160, think of the possible fights there, man. I mean, think of how loaded the middleweight division would be overnight. And if some of the better fighters at 168 were fighting at 175 right now, and they're going to be there eventually. I talked about Benavidez, Callum Smith, Caleb Plant. One day those guys are going to be at 75 anyway. And if they were there tomorrow and those guys were fighting against Bivol, even better Biev, man, you get some amazing fights. So the biggest problem to me is all the divisions, man. 17 divisions, it's just too many. It's too many.
That's too many, yeah. Before I go, I just wanted to ask you, I didn't get a chance to listen to the interview. I was going to see, what do you think about the Golovkin-Canelo fight? Do you think they'll fight this year, or do you
It's
think
not going to be
that'll
this
get
year.
pushed back?
It's not going to be this year. I mean, I've talked to Tom enough times, Tom Loeffler, where I can kind of tell, because Tom, again, he keeps it very professional. He's not going to, say too much, but I can kind of tell what he was saying. They're going to fight next year. It's probably going to be Cinco de Mayo 2021. That's probably when we're going to get that third fight.
Oh, yeah, that's what I heard as well. Yeah, thanks for that. I'll speak to you soon then.
All right, have a good one.
All right, nice.
All right, you guys, I lied. That wasn't the last call. We have one more caller here. This will be the last call, okay? 401. You're on the neutral corner. Last call tonight. Go.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Good.
Hey, so I'm actually from Providence, Rhode Island. We have a middleweight champion, Boo Boo Andre. He's actually my big cousin, blood relative, you know? Yeah, so I wanted to ask you, obviously he's my cousin. I support him. I want to see him in the big fights, but I watched your video before about Golovkin needing to fight him. I think he does need to do a little bit more work. You know, he's my cousin. I support him, but I think that if you look at how Golovkin was coming up, he fought multiple times a year, making the big drama shows. I feel like, Boo's my big cousin, but he's kind of slacking on doing that. He's fighting once in every year, maybe not enough to get the big fights. You know what I mean? How do you feel about that?
Yeah, bro. Well, thanks for calling in the show. Providence is one of the towns in America. I've been to almost every town in this country, but that's one town I haven't been to that I'd love to check out someday. But for the record, because, I've taken heat for criticizing your cousin. I like Demetrius Andrade as a fighter a lot. And I remember when he was a prospect at 154. This is going back, probably 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember saying, this dude is going to be a problem for Golovkin one day when he moves up to 160. I didn't see the Charlos as being a big problem and some of the other guys that have moved up. But I looked at Andrade's style, his skill set, and I was like, this dude's going to be a problem. And then I don't know what happened, bro, but I don't know if it's an entitlement thing or if it's just he's getting pretty good money to only fight once or twice a year. He's made some bad business decisions that have cost him time, but in the end, he's made out all right financially. It's just, if you look at, I talked to Tom Loeffler earlier in the show. Gennadiy, when he first came to America, he was fighting 3-4 times a year for $200,000, $300,000, $400,000. I know Boo Boo's making more than that right now, and he's fighting once a year, maybe twice a year. He's getting paid more for fighting lower level opposition a lot of the time than Golovkin faced. So I just think he's just got to get busier, dude. He's just got to step it up. If he does, he could create the demand for a fight with Charlo, Canelo, Golovkin, whoever. But until he gets busy and steps up the opposition and really, really plants his feet and tries to hurt dudes and get him out of there, I don't think Canelo and Golovkin, why would they go near him at this point? They just don't have to.
Yeah, that's what I tell people all the time. Obviously, if you're from Providence, you're going to support him. He's my cousin. I support him too, but I'm also realistic. I don't think that anybody who isn't creating the kind of demand that Triple G did deserve to get the big fight like with Canelo. He worked his ass off, did what he had to do, and eventually, they got a messy situation after, but he got the fight. And I would tell people, listen, he's my cousin. I support him 100%, and I want him to get the big fights, but you don't go somewhere, get a job, and expect to buy a mansion. No, you go somewhere, get a job, and start small. He's trying to go from fighting the small position to the elite level. He is elite level, but I agree he should get busier and stuff. And I've been to the boxing gym Boo Boo always went to. I grew up with him a lot, but I'm not gonna be biased because he's my cousin. I'm gonna be realistic here. And Triple G is my favorite fighter. From the sports standpoint. But obviously, if Boo Boo's fighting, I'm supporting him no matter what. But also, that would have been a crazy fight when Triple G was in his prime, at least. But I don't know. I think you could give a Boo Boo a tough challenge even now. So if they were to fight,
Well, it'd be such a huge jump in opposition for Boo Boo, right? He just hasn't fought anybody.
He's never been tested like that. That's what I'm saying. He hasn't been, really pushed to that limit. And I feel like it'd be kind of too much for him, especially when G was in his prime. Back then, I was like, listen, I'm going to support Boo, but honestly, I don't know if he's going to win this one. If he did fight him back then, I'd support him completely. But I'm like, it's going to be hard because he's never been at that point. It's like, look what happened with Vanis, getting dropped, and then you see what Triple G did to him. It's kind of like levels to it a little bit,
Yeah, and part of that is building yourself up and going. Like, look, with the Vanis fight, him being dropped, I don't look at that as a big deal. I mean, that's just part of boxing.
Yeah, exactly.
And the thing is, he got dropped, he got back up, he won the fight. And he needs to go through a few more of those situations, that process. He was supposed to fight Billy Joe Saunders, and for the record, a lot of people thought Saunders was going to win a fight. I thought Andrade was going to win. I favored Andrade. I still think he'd beat him right now because I think Saunders is overrated. But and it's not his fault that fight fell through. Saunders is the one who got caught, with drugs. But he's got to do something, dude. You got to talk to your cousin and tell him to get busy.
I know, yeah. I mean, it's kind of hard to say, hey, dude, stop fighting people. But, when I see him, it's not too often. But I'm like, I wish the best for him. And he's making his money doing his thing. But, if you're a boxer, you really want the legacy more than anything. And it kind of sucks because, he is a big, big talent, really good. But it's like, and at the end of the day, he's not going to get the big fight. He's 32 now. I'm like, he's getting up there in the age. But, he hasn't taken crazy punishment. So maybe he'll be one of the special guys when they're older. They're still pretty good, He's a pretty slick fighter.
Maybe. I think we just got to see, man. We got to see how he looks in there against an elite level guy, if he can take a punch. And then with a guy like him that is a mover, who uses skills, what happens when he's in there with a guy who won't let him do that shit? Can he bite down and grit out a tough fight? Like Golovkin just had a really tough one with Derevyanchenko. Derevyanchenko, style-wise, was a nightmare for Gennadiy. And Triple G was forced to bite down and just fight, just grit that shit out, and he did it. Can Boo do that? Maybe. He might have that in him, but we have to see. We need to see somebody pull that out of him.
Yeah, you always got to get tested.
Exactly.
All right, thanks for taking the call, Mike. It was a pretty highlight of my day, you talking to Tom. I was at work bored all day. A few more minutes till this podcast starts up.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate that, brother. Thanks a lot.
No problem.
All right, have a good one.
Have a good day.
You too. All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That is the show for today. My phone's about to die, so we're about to drop off here, guys. I appreciate all the great calls today. We went a little late, a little long, but great calls. So I don't think you guys will mind. Make sure that you share. Make sure that you spread the word about the show. Hit the like button, all that good stuff. All right? I will see yous at the fights.